We're missing Dr. Skelly, right? Oh, there he is. Oh, there he is. Okay, I think we are ready to go.
I don't see Leah here.
Oh, Leah, I thought Leah was here just a second ago.
Yeah, she was.
Let me text her.
Trustees Zuniga and Strati will be joining in just a few moments. She had lost her connection.
Okay. Well, let me give her a minute to reconnect.
I can hear the Burlingame band in the background.
That's good. Hey, Ms. Aquino, are you in the district office in the Mustang room?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you may be the one who called upon to lead us in the pledge here. Is that possible or no?
Yes, we're going to project the flag on the screen.
Oh, good. You're always a step ahead of me tonight.
I think you could lead it, Kevin.
Okay, I'll do it if my pleasure, especially, you know, with this crazy world we live in right now.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if we should start
Yeah, I think that's probably good.
and Leah can catch up with us when
Yeah.
she joins.
Okay.
Okay. Let me call the meeting to order since we are at 7:05. And welcome to the first regularly scheduled March meeting of the High School District Board. I hope your month is off to a good start. Let me take roll call here. Trustee Griffin,
Here.
Trustee Zuniga will join us shortly, I believe, but is absent right now. Trustee Land,
Here,
Trustee Dwyer,
Present.
and I am here. So let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Skelly, could you lead us in that?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So let me make a few announcements here. We have our Spanish language interpreter for the meeting this evening, Suyen Avaruz. I hope I got that name right. For those who would like to attend the meeting in Spanish, that option's available. Suyen, would you please communicate that for us this evening?
Para las personas que necesitan interpretación en español, esa está disponible.
Okay,
You
thank
can
you.
replace the interpreting room. Thank you.
If you wish to view closed captions of this meeting, please view the meeting on the San Mateo Union High School District Board Meeting YouTube channel. The link to the YouTube channel can be found on our website. You may view the captions in English as we live stream our meeting tonight, and you can view the captions in a variety of other languages if you choose to watch after the meeting is ended. Viewers may request additional accommodations by calling 650-558-2201. We took a couple of actions in closed session. Let me report those out to you. In closed session, the board, upon the motion of Trustee Lees Dwyer and seconded by Trustee Land, moved to approve 2 special education settlements with a vote of 5-0. In closed session, the board, upon the motion of Trustee Lees Dwyer and seconded by Trustee Land, moved to postpone the expulsion hearing, 3 cases with a vote of 5-0. So if you wish to make a comment today on an agenda item or during the public comment section at the beginning of the agenda, please use the raised hand feature on Zoom to be recognized when invited to do so by the board president for each item on which you wish to comment. And you'll be admitted to speak during the public comment period. The board president will call on you. Please note that comments are limited to 3 minutes. The board president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public comment depending upon the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. Communications to the Board of Trustees this evening. We have the 2021-22 first interim financial report letter. Is there any discussion, comments on that?
I think the only thing I'd like to say is I'm glad to see it was a positive certification. So Yancy, nice job.
Yes, I was pleased with that too. Moving to J, let's see, J, recognition. We don't have any recognitions this evening. Moving to K, the consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull anything off the consent agenda?
I move approval.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion from trustee Dwyer and a second, it was a second from trustee Land. Okay. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Zuniga,
Yes.
trustee Land,
yes.
trustee Dwyer,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So consent agenda is approved. Regular reports, report of the superintendent.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hanley, generally, I think there's time for board member comments unless.
Oh, that's right. You're right. I skipped over that.
So I'm happy to, I always defer to board members, so I'll wait.
Mr. Land,
I just want us to acknowledge the crisis that's going on in Ukraine, and I think it's important that we acknowledge that. I've had to deal with, as a middle school principal, how we purvey this to our students and what's going on with this conflict, and I just think we need to acknowledge it, and my thoughts are there.
thank you. Mr. Griffin,
Yeah, I just want to quickly acknowledge International Women's Day, which was Wednesday, I think, March 8th. And as a time to celebrate the historical, cultural, and political achievements of women. I also think it's a time to recognize the gender inequities that continue to exist in our society. That's my comment. Thanks.
thank you. Trustee Zuniga,
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Trustee Griffin, for acknowledging International Women's Day. And I also wanted to add that we recognize all people that identify as women throughout the world. That not everybody is always acknowledged. So I wanted to make a point of that, and I also want to acknowledge that we are on Ramaytush Ohlone land. I wanted to also give some updates. The Youth Leadership Forum. It's a conference that goes on every year over the summer for students with disabilities. They've extended their deadline for their applications to March 30th. So if anybody out there is interested in participating in the conference during the summer with YLF, you can find their applications on their website. And then also the ACLU is holding an event called Students, Schools, and Policing. It's redefining youth safety on March 30th on Zoom. So stay tuned for that. And then also, I wanted to remind people that you can still get vaccinated. There's still a lot of clinics out there, so please do your duty and do that. But it's also, it's Athletic Trainer Month. So I wanted to acknowledge all of our trainers in our district too that do so much for our athletes. And keep everybody healthy and safe. And so I wanted to acknowledge everyone that is a trainer. So thank you. And I think, and Peninsula High School, I just wanted to say that only because we have a family member there too that is participating, but today at their open house, they were going to recognize some second trimester highlights for their students. So I just wanted to give a shout out to PHS. So thank you.
thank you. Trustee Dwyer,
I just wanted to take a moment to talk about the Black History Museum and Learning Center that Carolyn Hoskins is the founder of. I took my husband down there this weekend on Saturday, and she is running the museum for an extra month. So it's open this month. It's down in Redwood City. You could actually take the train, which was what we did. It is $5, amazingly well spent. She has so much good information. The collection of items that she has is just amazing. And I think that no matter what your background is, there's you'll have a lot to learn there because there's a lot of famous people that, she has displays on, but there are a lot of inventors and a lot of inventions that I think people don't realize were done by Black people over time in this country. And I think her displays give you a tremendous insight into Black history in this country and all the contributions and things that people have done. So it's really worth seeing. Carolyn Hoskins should be commended for all the work that she's put in to put this together. And again, it's worth, we spent more than an hour there, and it's really worth the time. So thank you.
Thank you. Just briefly, I had the chance to represent the district along with Trustee Dwyer and Trustee Land at the Millbrae Movers and Shakers event. I think it was just last week. And it was a terrific event. Pam Jasinski from Mills High School gave a great presentation of Mills. There's a lot of appreciation for everything that Mills does and everything that the Lions Club does for Mills at that event. So it was a great community chance to share the opportunities that we have to support each other. And I think it's a well worthwhile event to attend if you have a chance. So I was glad that I got a chance to go. And Slava Ukraine, glory to Ukraine.
President Hanley, I believe you have a public comment when you're ready.
Yes, go ahead. If there are public comments on non-agenda items, we can take those right now.
I think we have Ms. Jacobson here. Go ahead.
Okay.
I think you need to unmute at least, Ms. Jacobson. I don't think this is a problem on our end, is it, Ms. Aquino?
No, she's promoted. I believe you can unmute Ms. Jacobson. And if you'd like to turn your camera on, we're ready for public comment.
Is there another public comment we could take first, or she's the only public comment?
That's the only one.
Perhaps we proceed and we can insert her into the into our, as we go along, I think.
Okay. Yeah, if you can unmute it at another time, raise your hand again, and we'll try to take your comment at that time.
Okay, so I think I'm up next. Is that right, Mr. Haley?
Yes.
Okay. Well, tonight is open house at all of our schools except for Hillsdale. Hillsdale had some police action around the school. They were in lockdown for quite a large part of the day. Mr. Gilbert, in consultation with me and other folks, including Mr. Childers, decided that the best path forward to keep focus on what's going on with the school was to postpone it from tonight. So they're not having open house, but obviously, all the other schools are. I'm sure those events are going well. We mentioned Women's History Month is March. Women in our district made history this month with the greatest season of women's basketball that this district has ever seen. We had 5 of our teams involved in the CCS playoffs. 2 of our teams won CCS, beating 2 schools from our district, and then a third one finished third. So 1, 2, and 3 in CCS division, and then another 1, 2, and then so then they all went on to on the first day of Women's History Month. There were 5 of our teams playing in the NorCal championship, and 2 of those teams ended. One of those teams ended up being a Northern California finalist, and then Aragon's boys soccer also made it to the finals of NorCal. I was sorry to miss the movers and shakers in Millbrae. That's a celebratory group. They enjoy each other's company. There's a wonderful sense of community there, and they move and shake those folks. They know how to have a good time, and I'm delighted that you 3 board members were able to have a good time. I attended with Assistant Superintendent Julia Kemke and Director of Special Ed, Dr. Holly Wade. We attended the 2034 consortium meeting. We actually hosted it. Lots of good learning there. I thought we acquitted ourselves well as the host district. It rotates between the 7 districts involved. I want to thank Ms. Aquino for all of her work. She says she was an event planner in a previous life, and I believe it. And she also, Sonia Gill, Dr. Kemke, Dr. Wade, I think they helped us. It was a really nice event, so I was pleased about that. At the end of the month of March 31st is the CSM Centennial Gala. It takes place at let's see, where is it? It's at the Cole Mansion in Burlingame. I know several of the board members are going to attend. I know Don Scatena is, because the middle college is such an integral part there. And I know it's going to be a great event. I'm sorry that I'm going to miss it to be back in over spring break with visiting my parents. But we're delighted, and we congratulate the college on its 100 years. It came into being. It was birthed by this district, so we're really proud of that. This weekend is daylight savings time. The afternoons and evenings get longer. It's easier to have spring sports out there. There's happy sounds outside of our district office all spring, as so many kids are involved in spring sports, and so we're looking forward to that. I think it's good for students' mental health when daylight savings time is good for all of our mental health, for that matter, to have that time. And so we're looking forward to finishing up March and then spring break, and then the next 2 months, the year will be over before we know it. And then as we go through this time, one of my messages to folks is to do less, to try to even though the pandemic is certainly we hope is winding down, we want folks to really take care of themselves during this transition period, for the reasons that this is still not a peaceful world, and we have to try to create peace for ourselves. So I think that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Do we have a student board member tonight?
We do not have one this evening.
Okay. Report of the District Teachers Association.
Thank you. Just getting my Zoom stuff ready. So I would have been at open house, but the upside to a fairly tense afternoon is that you get to hear from me. Good evening, President Hanley, members of the board, district cabinet. First, I want to commend the Hillsdale administration, staff, and students for their truly exemplary handling of a tense situation today at Hillsdale High School. The HHS admin team sprang into action truly without preparation and provided apt, logistical, emotional, and practical support for anxious student body and staff. The common refrain from students was a very anxious, wait, this is not a drill? For those of us who were around for the events of August 2009, it was comforting to know that we all had each other's back. Proud to be part of the Hillsdale family. Kudos to all. As you all know, the governor, with little, if any, practical forethought, decided to relax the indoor masking requirements in schools last week. He has left the final decision of the local agencies little, if any, guidance. It is truly perplexing that we have gone from strongly recommending only high quality masks like N95s and KN95s to essentially masks optional in only a matter of weeks. Yes, our case numbers are down from the Omicron peak in January, but our district has also recorded over 1,100 positive cases, a number that is surely undercounted since then. In fact, there were 39 positive cases recorded this week alone. If our district was a county, that number would be 50 times the threshold for entering the purple tier. You remember the purple tier, right? Blast from the past aside, the point here is that this is not over. Whatever decision you make to relax masking requirements should be based on facts. I'll share a few. I shouldn't even have to mention safety. You've heard me talk about that so many times before. There's simply no logical argument that removing safety measures will not increase risk, period. So let's move on to the practical perspective that I believe the governor is lacking. First, the data. Again, we are sliding down the backside of the Omicron peak. That's good. That said, our case numbers, hospitalizations, and deaths are not yet in the range of the best of July 2021. Also, the BA.2 subvariant of Omicron now accounts for nearly 50% of the new cases in the UK. This subvariant, which is frighteningly more transmissible than its parent, Omicron, and Omicron was crazy transmissible, is causing most public health experts to suggest that we can expect to see continued surges in circulation at high levels. As far as local data, we have consistently seen almost an exact replica of the trends observed in the UK, only a few weeks later. Furthermore, our district has seen its own surges after every school break. Imagine the difficulty in reinstating a suspended masking requirement in the middle of April if the return from spring break is no different from before. I want this to be over. You want this to be over. We all want this to be over. But COVID is not over. As I mentioned earlier, our own testing and tracing prove that. Second, the reality of our classrooms. To my knowledge, and to most of my colleagues' knowledge, there have been no groundswells of anti-masking from our students. The students have adopted the protocols of indoor masking because they understand that it is for the common good. It's for the good of the school community. Our students understand that we take precautions to protect everyone, just like driving the speed limit and wearing seatbelts. No one is suggesting not wearing a seatbelt simply because the seatbelt requirement has helped to reduce traffic deaths. Our students understand that there are unvaccinated students in our classes, their peers, their colleagues, students who cannot be vaccinated for medical reasons, their friends, their neighbors, students who are immunocompromised, students who have comorbidities, and students who have family members who fit all of these descriptions. Our students know that some of their teachers and counselors and administrators also fit these descriptions. These are the perspectives that are important. Some might say that removing the mask will bring students greater joy in the classroom. As I mentioned, I'm not aware of any student uprising based solely on mask protocol. More importantly, one must ask how much joy will be realized by the immunocompromised student, or the student with diabetes, or the son or daughter of a compromised parent when he or she walks into a classroom with unmasked individuals in a time of a surge. What about those students, the students who will no longer feel safe at school? Also, what will we tell the families of students who attend the classes in 10% of our classrooms with substandard ventilation systems if masks are to be removed? These are perspectives we must consider, not the governors. We must consider these. Finally, the staff. All of the points above also apply to teachers, staff, and administrators, as I mentioned. The same questions must be asked. In addition, we must remember that those who contract COVID, even when fully vaccinated and boosted, do not always return after the requisite 10 days. What about the dozens of days of lost instruction that might be preventable in the future? What about the employees in our district who are suffering from long COVID, some of whom will never work again? How many more losses like that are acceptable? You should also know that when surveyed, a strong majority, 70% of our Teachers Association voiced support for continuing masking protocols through the end of the school year. That is not insignificant. It is based on their authentic assessment of what is happening in their classrooms. Again, perspective. Accordingly, we have scheduled a joint discussion with the district regarding the impact of any change in masking protocols on workplace safety, which is a mandatory subject of bargaining. That is not at all an adversarial statement. On the contrary, I am very, very proud of the collaboration between the association and the district to find the best course in the best interest of students throughout this entire pandemic. Indeed, since March of 2020, we have worked together with common goals of safety, health, and student support. We have done well. We are doing well. We owe it to the community to make thoughtful and informed decisions in the best interest of the most students, even if it's not as immediately as gratifying as we would like it to be. We all want this to be over. We all want to go back to a time when masks were not part of the educational process. The fact of the matter is that we cannot go back. COVID happened, COVID is still here, and COVID is still disrupting the educational process. We only have 45 regular days of school left. Again, perspective. Finally, I want to steal a phrase from Dr. Skelly's latest message to the community. When discussing the state's recent communique, he said, when health authorities who have devoted their professional lives to keeping the public safe strongly recommend something, that's the same thing as saying that we should do it. And I hope that each and every member of our district community will continue to do so. Just because we can choose not to wear a mask doesn't mean we should. These are the perspectives you must consider. We urge you to make thoughtful, informed, and practical decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Report of the CSEA Chapter 519 representative.
We have no one from CSEA this evening.
Okay. How about Adult School Teachers Association representative?
Yes, we have Miss Tom with us. Miss Tom, are you ready?
Yes, I am. My name is Jean Tom. I'm from the San Mateo Adult School. I'm the Testing and Assessment Coordinator, and I'm here tonight to give you an update on what's been happening at the adult school. We have a few things to share. Some things about the school itself. We're really excited that in the fall we're going to be launching a student center on campus, and this will be a place for students to research college and career resources, space to work on their resumes and other workforce readiness needs, to seek tutoring and to have access to technology. In regards to classes, we've got a few new announcements about classes coming up. We've partnered with the San Mateo County Sheriff's Department, and we're pleased to announce that our ESL jail program with the San Mateo County Jail will officially begin on March 21st. So it's just in a few weeks. And this is historic, as this is the very first time that we've had an ESL jail program in San Mateo County. At the last meeting, I think my colleague Lynette Garcia was here to talk about career education. So I'm just going to give a short announcement that she wanted to add, that we're adding 2 additional CE courses to our to the summer. They are Introduction to Medical Terminology. That's going to be in the summer. And we have another class called Medical Billing and Coding. That's actually in fall of 2022. And we're continuing to look at 3 other possible fall offerings: caregiver training program, a dental rover assistant program, and a phlebotomy program. And then finally, in regards to our ESL program, we're going to have graduation for our advanced students in next month, in April, and we're excited that it's going to be in person. The last one we had was over Zoom. So we're hoping that we will have around 20 or so graduates. We're also working with the College of San Mateo to offer a placement test here at the campus, so that students who want to go to CSM in the fall can have priority registration and also feel a little more comfortable heading off to college. And those are the items that I wanted to share with the board.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Did we happen to get our general public speaker?
She has not come back, raising her hand, President Hanley. We were keeping an eye out just in case.
Okay, let's move on then to special reports and appearances. And was the district response to CDPH recommendation that masks be strongly recommended.
Thank you very much. I'm going to do this presentation. So why don't we go to the next slide? So as the board knows, the state in light of the Center for the U.S. Center for Disease Control has changed eased the COVID-19 restrictions as health officials predict that we're going to see we're entering a less dangerous phase of the pandemic. Sometimes it's called when COVID-19 becomes endemic or other phrases like that. Tonight, we're going to be talking mostly about masking, which is one pillar of our efforts to control COVID. But we are, as the board knows, we have other parts of this effort to control the virus, including ventilation, testing, and contact tracing. So things are a lot better in terms of the numbers. There was a tremendous surge at the beginning of the year. Positivity rate in the county now is at 1.72%. That continues to fall. The state has put a big effort, or the CDC and others are now shifting away from the number of cases, however, to what are the hospitalizations and rate. In San Mateo County, latest numbers I've seen are that there are 28 people. I learned from my daughter, who has been spending part of her residency in hospitals, that many of the hospitalization cases are long-term folks who have been in hospitals for quite some time, elderly folks and the like. So we're shifting to this phase of hospitalizations as we enter this new phase as a measure of pieces. I do want to say that the R right now is 0.71. It's lower, it's higher than 0.71. It means that cases are declining, but it was declining faster earlier. I did some looking right now. In the last 30 days, we've seen 3,424 COVID-19 cases in the county. A month ago, on 28 days ago, that number was 26,204, which is about 7 or 8, 9 times as big. And then if you go back, even before that, the case numbers were super duper high. So the case numbers are going down. And if you look at the trends on the county website, they continue to go down. So let's go to the next slide. So the changes in the mask mandate effective March 12th. After March 11th, the universal masking requirement for K-12 and child care settings will expire. The California Department of Public Health strongly recommends that individuals in these settings continue to mask in indoor settings when this requirement lifts. Now, what does strongly recommend mean? I've written to staff, and Mr. Childress quoted some of what I said, and that means that you should do this. You should mask. We've had lots of discussions, he and I and other members, about what percentage of our students will, when we ask them to, and when we strongly recommend to them, and we share that with our parents, what percentage of the students will do that? I don't know. At first, I said it would be around 98% or a number like that. I'm less optimistic that it'll be that high, and I think some of it is a function on the kind of messaging that we do. We don't want force anybody to do that if this is the policy the board does, but we certainly want to strongly recommend it. And just because somebody can do something, we live in a country full of rights, but there's also responsibilities, and there's also a moral dimension to the decisions that folks make. And we hope that folks will choose for the reasons that Mr. Childers and the board mentioned, that we want to keep folks safe, and we want to be attentive to the people that are around us. So when we talk about strongly recommend, we've talked a little bit about that. In terms of what the CDPH might do, they are going to update this guidance, and we'll look for those. And we have made a practice in this district of, when it comes to things like quarantine time and contact tracing, we have followed those guidances, the guidance that we've received from the CDPH in the actions that we've taken. Next slide. So we've been looking at other neighboring districts to see what are they doing in this situation. And what we're seeing is that the vast majority of the districts around us are following the CDPH guidelines. There's a list here. Sequoia is, generally speaking, the district that we compare ourselves most often to. Other neighboring districts that to our south that are similar and we compare ourselves to include Palo Alto, Mountain View, Los Altos, and Los Gatos, Saratoga. Those all are high school districts. Many of those have high schools, and they are following the CDPH guidelines. South San Francisco Unified, Pacifica, and Burlingame, they're going to extend their mask mandate until after spring break, and then transition to strongly recommend. So in general, everybody is adopting a policy of masking until strongly recommending, or going to strongly recommending after their spring break. Next slide. So what's our recommendation to the board? Our recommendation is that you follow the CDPH guidelines to strongly recommend. We should also commit to following CDPH guidelines. And if the guidelines say that we should return to mandatory masking in the schools at a later date, that's what we should do. And if they say that they should go to less restrictive guidance, that's what we should do as well. The CDPH is the guidance that we've received throughout this process, and that served us well, and we've worked diligently. I don't think any district has followed those guidelines more closely than we have, or set up the kind of robust things that maybe the county health department didn't do, or other groups when it came to contact tracing or testing. We stepped in and we did those. So the last thing here is a list of the local considerations. That's a hyperlink there that will give you some guidance to what would be some of the standards that folks would look at to say whether or not they would do something different than the guidance at the state level. Let's go to the next slide if we could. So we have done a lot of things as a district here to mitigate against COVID-19. We have been at the forefront of monitoring school and community vaccination rates. We're now asking folks for their booster status and gathering that information, because I was listening to something when I'm driving today. People who are vaccinated are 14 times less likely to get sick from COVID still than people who are unvaccinated. And, that's just a remarkable number. That is the best possible thing we can do to make sure that you don't get sick or die from COVID. And we need to continue to be as active as we possibly can in that way. So we're going to encourage and make actionable booster and vaccine opportunities as much as we can, particularly for those students and families at the margin. And we've done a fantastic job there. Peninsula, San Mateo, Cappuccino, Hillsdale, the schools where we have students furthest at the margins. Those are the places that we're making sure that folks have vaccinated. Continue to expect students and staff to stay home when they're sick. And we're going to give everybody who wants it at-home testing for all those folks, so that when folks at the end of spring break, they can test themselves and not come to campus if they're not feeling well. So these mitigation strategies that we're doing are above and beyond any other district that I'm aware of in terms of what we're doing to prevent COVID. Next slide. So exposure notifications after March 11th. We don't know what CDPH is going to do, or what the CDC is going to do. But we expect our exposure notifications will remain the same. We'll continue to send notifications on Thursdays, just as we've been doing this during this year. Individuals who receive exposure notifications are encouraged to test 3 to 5 days after exposure, and may continue to come to school unless they test positive or have symptoms. Our contact tracing recommendations have changed, and we'll continue to look at those. And we're going to get guidance this week or early next week. Next slide. So the other piece that is super important here, this mask issue is a flashpoint for folks. And we are going to have to, whether it's now or at some other point, we are going to live in a world in which some people are masked and some people are unmasked. We see that in outside places that we go. We see that in various settings where people go when they have a choice. Some people wear masks and some people don't when they're not compelled to do that. This is, we also need to, we need to continue to, we need to provide a situation in which there's no mask bullying here. That students many times don't have a choice, either based on their circumstances or based on what their parents tell them about whether or not to wear a mask. And we need to respect that personal choice. Our students have lots of agency, but on this issue, they may not have full agency. And as a community, we need to embrace our students regardless of whether if the decision is made to go to follow the CDPH guidelines. Some will choose to mask and some will choose not to mask. And no matter what that is, we as an organization, and this is going to be important for our teachers because they have strong opinions on both sides of this equation, that there's no mask bullying. Mask bullying, that's a new term for me, but where they have a choice, and we need to accept that choice, even if we disagree with that choice. Next slide. So why are we making this recommendation? Well, I think there's three big reasons. And the first one is, I think the most important. The district has followed the CDBH and county recommendations throughout the pandemic, and we should continue to do that. These are scientists. These are folks who make their living. We have to believe in a government that makes decisions based on our collective well-being, and this is the decision that they've made, this is their recommendation, and as I read it, that served us well throughout the pandemic and should continue to serve us well as we go forward. Right. The other part is setting up our own standards for masking sets a precedent and would require staff to bring all these health decisions to the board. So if we're not going to go to strongly recommend, when would we go to strongly recommend? What would be the conditions for doing that? I don't have an answer for that question. And I'm not qualified to make a decision like that, except to follow the CDC and the CDPH guidelines. And then if the mask mandate is not shifted to strongly recommended, staff, and I really respect and admire Mr. Childers, but this work of enforcing masking and disciplining students who choose not to follow it is going to fall on our administrators. What do I think will work better? I think what will work better is when we outline for our students and call on their collective goodwill and their collective ethics to do the right thing. I think our students and staff will rise to the occasion to wear masks, but compelling them to opens us up to administrators and staff taking a lot of time and heartache and disagreement regarding those students who choose to not wear masks. Next slide. So that's the end of the presentation. As I often say to you, when we have issues like this, it's my job and staff's job to bring you recommendations. It's your job to make decisions and policy and set the direction for the district. So whatever you decide, we'll go from there.
So are there any clarifying questions before we take public comment on this? Linda.
I have a question. If a teacher wants every student to wear a mask in his or her classroom under strongly recommended, would that be something that they would do?
I mean, I don't think this is up to teachers. I think if it was strongly recommended, a teacher would have, I would hope that the teacher would feel comfortable and students would respect that, hey, there's a reason why I want you to wear a mask in my classroom. I have great confidence that the students would choose to do that. I don't know that they all will. Based on, that would be my expectation, but I don't see how you can have a particular rule on something like this, where a individual teacher could say, well, it is strongly recommended everywhere, but in my classrooms, it's mandatory.
Okay. Thank you.
Trustee Land.
So similar question. So I'm struggling with this at my school. I have a teacher who is immunocompromised, and her husband got stage 4 cancer and going through chemotherapy. And is there a possibility that for that one teacher in that one class, those 6 periods have to wear the mask, or it's required? So exceptions like that, is there going to be exceptions in those cases?
So what have you done in Los Altos, I guess, is the
So that's what I'm trying to say, is it's a little bit more complicated. And I think my question goes into my comment. The question is, it's not so simple. And in certain cases like this, there should be exceptions. So I think, going towards, and I was going to hold off on this comment till later, but I think we need to worry about kind of the strategy, because there's implementation. We've gone through so many different changes, and I do want us to head towards normalcy and having this strongly recommended and heading in this direction. It is the right thing to do, but how to do it and how to implement it, that's the problem. And you have cases like this where, this is not, we have to think this through a little bit better. And so that's my concern right now.
Yeah, and I'll just say that, we've had some comment about, the board knows this, that we have a section of the A building at Burlingame where it doesn't have the full HVAC system, and that building has, we've installed HEPA filters into the classrooms there. They're not, the term was used substandard. I don't think that's the right term. I think it's on a level lower than it still meets standard, but it's not the same as the other buildings. And that's why you're going to spend the summer and have the ventilation improved in there. So in situations like that, I think we need to say to folks, hey, this is the situation, we would, as strongly as we can say to you, hey, this is a particular case where, your kids should wear masks there, or staff should wear masks there. And similarly, if the case that you gave, I think, is another example. I mean, I do think that our students and our staff will step up in those kinds of situations, but we are entering a different phase. And I think to the extent that we can, we should follow the CDPH and the CDC guidelines.
So do we have public comment on this topic?
Yes, President Hanley, I'm going to promote Mr. Childress.
Sorry, the second time you promote, it takes a little longer. That's exactly what I was talking about before. I think it's more important to recognize the broader issue of the needs of our students, our teachers, our staff, and not single out a particular teacher or a particular classroom or a particular building. I mean, there's obviously a case to be made for the A building at Burlingame, and that needs to be addressed regardless of whatever decision you make as we go forward. But it is unacceptable to allow a subset of our district community, of the teachers, of the staff, of the students, to say, oh, it's okay here, it's okay there, and then allow an uninformed public or a biased public to vilify and or ridicule a particular individual or a particular classroom or a particular employee, whether it's classified, certificated, or whatever. Again, my point is we need to make thoughtful, informed decisions based on what's actually happening in our district, and we need to make policy that is informed by those facts, not make exceptions. So again, I struggle to understand why it would be acceptable to allow one teacher who may need those accommodations to have to then defend against a biased community. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
We now have Ms. McCardle. I will promote her in. Okay, Ms. McCardle, when you're ready.
Hi, did that work? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm going to echo Dr. Scully's point about following the CDC and the public health guidelines. Masking and all the requirements were set up initially because the CDC and the California Public Health recommended them. And you should follow those guidelines. So you can't follow them at the beginning and then decide when they want to drop them that, well, now you know better somehow. And the CDC and the public health said, people don't need uniform masking, and the immunocompromised can certainly mask with well-fitting N95s that are available free from the government. But at this point, you followed those guidelines all along, and to drop them now would make me say, why are you dropping them now? What do you know better than the CDC? What do you know better than California Public Health or San Mateo Health? So you need to follow those guidelines and be consistent.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I will now be bringing in Jen Jacobson. Okay, Ms. Jacobson.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I just wanted to say that I support the move to update the masking policy as recommended by Dr. Skelly. I think it's very reasonable. I think we are in a place as a community where we can where we can do this and where it's time to do this. And as for the immunocompromised teacher situation, there's always the option to wear a high quality one-way mask, as has been said. Individuals need to be free to take individual precautions and assess their own individual risk assessments. These kids have been wearing masks for 2 years. We actually don't even know the long-term risks of wearing masks for kids and their social development. I also want to just point out that there have been no studies to date that have demonstrated any significant positive effect from masking students in schools. And I can provide you with citations if you want, but when there isn't a significant measurable benefit from an intervention, and there are possible, long-term side effects, I think we can feel safe in ending that practice. And especially when our government has made this recommendation and this updated policy, we should follow it. And so that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
President Hanley, we do have one. Mr. Cavioli did request to speak. I'm going to promote him now.
Okay. You could unmute yourself and go ahead.
Your time to speak is here, Christopher. It says Christopher here. I think it's.
Christopher?
You're in the meeting. Would you like to speak? You raise your hand and we're promoted.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
no, I didn't raise my hand. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. We'll thank you.
Are there any other speakers?
There are no other raised. I'm sorry, there's one more raised hand.
Okay.
Mr. or Mrs. Colton, let me promote them.
Hi.
Yes, please go ahead.
All right, I'm a student at BHS. And someone said earlier about students not protesting the masks being off, but I feel like a lot of my peers are kind of anti the whole mask thing, especially after the CDC recommendation, and the continued like call for masks is kind of like just students don't like them. There's not really that many pro students, I think, and it kind of hurts education. And it hurts like social ability in classrooms. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
That is all of the raised hand and public speaking requests at this time, President Hanley. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Cavioli. Believe he's already spoke. Would you like me to re-promote him in?
Ms. Aquino, I think this is, I think we had Christopher before. This is Chris Cavagioli, so I think this is correct.
Okay.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Go ahead.
I'm in a dark area here outside. Yeah, so I read the slide deck. The only thing I would say is the term strongly recommended seems a bit strong to me, and it seems a bit bullying. I know it's not meant that way, but maybe you could just say that it's optional and then just leave it at that, and then people can make their own choice. That's my main point really that I want to make. But I want to thank the school board for being open to having that flexibility to have the kids make their own choices and not have the kids feel that one way is right and one way is wrong. You know, everyone should be able to do how they feel comfortable. I think that's what I want to say, my public comment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for considering, and I appreciate what you guys do.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That is all the public speakers at this time, President Hanley.
Okay. I'm going to close public comment then on this agenda item.
Can I just have a point of order?
Yes.
So he mentioned that it highly recommended is what the health department is saying. That is the language. So we really, if we change
strongly recommend it.
Strongly recommend, that is what the health department is saying. So it kind of contradicts because we're trying to follow what their recommendation is, and the recommendation is highly recommended or strongly
recommended.
Right. I think that's right, Mr. Landon. And the other part is that the things I have seen suggest that in the coming months, we will move to something like recommended as opposed to strongly recommended. And then another level, I think, if, you know, in May, there's envisions optional. So I want to stay with the language that, you know, the language that we want to use. So.
So I'm going to take the prerogative of going first. And because I want to throw out a different and I've emailed this to each of the board members, so they have it in their email. Because I don't think we should remove the mandate at this point. And I've laid out, because this isn't an easy issue to deal with. I've laid out my reasoning why we should do this and keep the mandate. And let me just give you a couple of minutes just to read through this. It is in your email. I just emailed it to all of you. Have you had a chance to go through it? Or you want another few minutes?
Those just references at the bottom of the page in blue. Is that the, oh, there's some more points there.
Yeah.
Are we ready to move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
I,
Are you having trouble taking it down? Okay.
I'm just taking it down now.
Okay. Thank you.
So those are my points. I don't think we've had a strong move from either students or staff to remove the mask, and it increases the risk, and I don't see a need to increase the risk at this time. We've had an uptick in cases in the district. We're still in the high transmission area in the county, according to the CDC website that's used for healthcare purposes. I think, until we reach the low area, I think we should keep masks on in the district. And I don't think we are violating science or the guidelines. The guidelines from day one have said that local jurisdictions can make their own determinations about the needs for their population. And as I point out in the memo, Santa Clara County just did that. So did Sonoma County. The Bay Area did it collectively at the beginning of the pandemic. We were much more restrictive than the rest of the state. So this has been done throughout the pandemic. I don't think it puts us as violating the science, violating the guidelines. It's part of the guidelines. That's my position. I don't think we were at a point in the pandemic where our cases are double what they were in November between Delta and Omicron. When we had that brief respite between Delta and Omicron, our cases are still double that respite. There's 7 times the amount of last June when we had the very low point when the authorities said you can take off your mask because we are at the lowest point possible. And we're 7 times last June and July. It's just, I don't see the need to increase the risk, is the bottom line. And I think we increase the risk if we take off the mask mandate. So let me recognize Trustee Dwyer, you have your hand up. You're the first.
I'm not sure I want to go first. Can I go? I don't want to go first. I'm still thinking.
Okay, Trustee Griffin.
Suppose I say I don't want to go first, but I will open
You're
my
second
You're
mouth.
now.
second. I actually went first.
Oh, that's true.
Well, yeah, okay, but anyway, I will put a few things out on the table here. And I know, you know, like in Alameda County where I work in closed confined areas. People have dropped their mask. I still wear my mask. I interview people. I talk to them and I wear my mask, and they kind of feel like they should put their mask on. And I'm like, well, I'm doing this just because I'm doing it. And, you know, I leave the choice to the people. You know, we've been following the CDPH regulations. And I think, you know, you made a good case, Peter, but I think, you know, we could need to continue to follow them. I think we do have some way, you know, contact tracing and some other things to try to mitigate it. Now, I do have some concerns in adopting this. What is it? Highly recommended, strongly recommended. I am concerned that we mitigate some of the impacts about mask bullying, because saying what we're going to try to do and actually doing it is going to be really difficult. So I think we need to create an environment. If we adopt this, we need to create an environment of tolerance, because people do not know everybody's circumstances. They do not know who's at home, who's immunocompromised, you know, and I think we've demonstrated both by the student body and the workforce that we are very aware of the people we work with. At least this far, we've claimed that, you know, we're sensitive to diversity and all types of aspects. And so I am hopeful that we'll have consideration shown by all parties, because the other thing there, and certainly there could be peer pressure, but if we make it, you know, where the atmosphere and signs and a program is out there to promote tolerance and understanding, that might mitigate some of the issues. And I'm concerned, you know, about retaliation or not cooperating with people because they don't subscribe to whatever your dictates are. I know there's going to be some, you know, potentially could be issues with teachers that don't feel safe in classrooms, and I'm not sure how that will be dealt with. But that's, you know, that's a question. And I would hate to see the instructional program turned into and maybe it's not the instructional program and teachers, but certainly the administration and a lot of people turned into enforcers, you know, on campuses to go around making sure everybody has got their mask on, or, you know, people are taking their mask off or having mixed signals. So I'd like to see us adopt it. I'd like to see some of these questions, you know, some of my comments and questions addressed, though. It was not eloquent. I didn't send it out. It came off the top of my pointy little head.
Okay, Trustee Zuniga.
Yeah, I'm really concerned. I agree with you, Trustee Hanley. I think that we shouldn't lift this so quickly, and I'll tell you why. And some of what, you know, Trustee Griffin was saying, that we don't all live in the same environments. We don't all have the same situations, and that is why. We have a population of people in our district also that don't have the luxury to just unmask. This is a privilege that many people don't have, to just say, oh, well, that's okay. You know, we see that the numbers have gone down. You know, we're just gonna you know, trust that we're not gonna get it, or we're gonna take them off and we'll be fine. That's not true for everyone. And that is the reason why I would hope that people would want to continue to wear their masks to protect each other. Maybe there should be, I don't know, a time when we can have these conversations and explain to each other why. And yeah, we don't have to defend or like explain everything, but maybe it'll help us to understand each other a little bit more in those conversations. But I guess my questions are, So what happens to the students that can't go to school now because they don't know who is going to be a threat to them physically, like for their health or not, or their families? What are we going to do with the students that aren't going to be able to participate anymore? What is, like, are we going to have the capacity to have all of those students in independent studies? And are they going to be able to have, like, you know, such a strong curriculum or such a strong, I don't know, class choice that it'll be fine? I mean, I don't know. And these are, you know, legitimate questions that I'm asking, not to be, you know, going against everything, but I want to know what's going to happen to them, you know. And I live in this community of people that can't just unmask. There's a really good article in the Sacramento Bee from a couple of people that are in the disabled community, and they are in disability justice, and they are explaining how it's not that simple, you know, for us. So again, you know, hoping that as a community, we're thinking of each other and wanting to protect each other, you know, that's important. I'm really surprised now that there are people that are saying to follow all of these guidelines, when from the beginning, a lot of people didn't even want to do that. So when that comes up, I'm really confused that it, you know, is it because it's beneficial now? I mean, I don't get it. So anyhow, that's my piece. I feel like it's too soon, and I don't want to go back and having to shut things down again. Or, like, the whole point of these precautions are to keep our kids in school. I think that is everyone's goal. I don't want to see any more lost time. I don't want to see kids not going to school. They need to go to school. They need to have those interactions. They need to learn that way. And their teachers also need to feel safe. Anyhow, so it's just the same thing as everyone has said with, you know, why keeping the mask mandate. So that is what I think. And thank you. That's it.
Trustee Land.
Down last.
You had your chance.
That's okay. I'm okay with being last. I am.
You had your chance. You were going to go first.
No, second.
Okay, you're right. So for me, you know, the thing is, over the past 2 years, we've had these watershed moments where we've had a huge shift. And each time we make these shifts, huge things happen, and there's lots of problems and there's lots of complications, and we have to go back and forth, and we make the changes and we want to move forward, but we have to adjust. So in my mind, keeping that in mind, I have some concerns. Then, you know, and when you talk about what happened, what the state and what the governor has asked of us, it is given to the local, and Peter made a very good point. It's up to us as local authorities to decide what to do. That is what is imparted to us as school boards for our schools. So we have to make that determination. As you saw in the slides, some have done one thing, some have done the other. So it's up to us to make a decision, and that's what the governor has wished us to do. So he's put it on our responsibility, and that's for us to make a decision. So I am perfectly comfortable with making a decision that may be contrary to what the science is saying, or what the CHCH group says. Now, I guess I'm going to shift gears a little bit, because now I'm going to think as a principal. In my district in Los Altos, as Dr. Skelly said, we are in the highly recommended, and that's what we've changed and gone to. And what I've noticed is some problems with implementation. And as an implementer, I've had some issues and problems, and thought, well, how are we going to do this differently? So as an administrator, I took some extra time to talk to my staff, to talk to our students, and really bring up and have a forum about this. And I think what Leah brought up is a really good point. We need to have discussion. We need to have it to be talked about before we implement the change. You know, it's a human side of things. How can we be more respectful? How can we be, hey, considerate of someone else? You know, yes, I don't want to wear a mask, but what's going to be, what's the cost to someone else? I think we need to have some authority with our students and give the students voice to talk about this as before we implement a strategy or a change. And I think that's something that we really need to consider. so far at my school, we still all have masks indoors and outdoors, even though we've let up and even though there's a change. It's going to change, but we said to each other as a staff and as a community that we need to talk about it. And I think that's what we need to do as a district, is we need to have discussions about this, because there is going to be a million different things we hadn't thought of that are going to come up. And if we don't consider those, at least to some degree, and really think about this in the humanity of it all, you know, I'm not ready to do this, and I'm not ready to implement this. I think we need to hold off. I think we need to head in this direction. I think this is the right direction we need to go in. I think we're getting towards that sense of almost normalcy, where there is going to be some options of wearing masks and not wearing masks, but we haven't talked about what this environment is going to look like for everyone. And that's why there's still fear and frustration that comes across with what everybody's talking about. So I think we need to take a step back and say, this is a direction we should go in, but how and when we go into this direction, we need to take a little bit more time and think it through a little bit more clearly. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I think, again, discussions amongst our staff, amongst our students, and how we're going to do this, and what's it going to look like? How are we going to, you know, a good example of one discussion that came up was from a student who's a 7th grader, who said, well, if I'm in a project group and I'm, you know, everybody's got their mask on and I have my mask off, should I ask them, should I have my mask on? Or just the opposite, my whole group that I'm working with really in close quarters are all wearing masks or not wearing masks, and I'm not comfortable. Can I ask them to wear a mask? You know, it's going through little scenarios like that and talking things through. That's just polite humanity that we need to bring to this discussion. And so I think we have some work to do, and we're not ready to implement this quite yet.
Okay. My turn?
Yes, your turn.
Okay. I think we should take a wait and see approach. I do not think we should unmask at this time. And I have my reasons for that are that it's going to put additional work on staff, and no one needs it right now. There's too much going on. It's also going to put additional stress on students, because the ones who wear the masks are going to feel different than the ones who don't. You're never going to control bullying with, you know, who's in, who's out, who's wearing one, who's not, why are you doing it? The in-group pressure, peer pressure to not wear a mask. I don't think students have been through enough in the last 2 years, and I don't want to put that kind of pressure on them right now. Particularly, here, I'm looking at the calendar, it's March 10th. Spring break is what, the last week of March. So they're all going to be on break, and none of them are going to wear a mask. Highly unlikely. They'll be out and about doing things. They'll be outside, hopefully. Weather should be good, and they will have some freedom, which I think is really healthy for them. And then when they return, they should all be tested so we can see what's going on. But when they return after spring break, we're going to know more about how this worked for other people, how this worked for the communities, how that's worked at the county level. Right now, we don't. Right? It's almost like you're going to buy a car, you never test drove it. It's a brand new model. You really don't know how any of it works, all these new screens and stuff, but you're just going to go out and buy that new one because someone else said that was a good idea. I would rather have a couple other people buy it first and see how they do before I put my money on the table for it. I think we have a duty to protect our students in our schools when they're with us, and our teachers and our staff, and not put it on them to try to protect themselves at this point in time. I don't see that as being fair, and with me, fair is a big thing. I think if they have to wear their masks in the classrooms and the hallways, that's a good thing. They can all do the same thing. Everyone can have that same protection. When they go outside, they're going to take off the mask as soon as they hit our doors and go. That's how it's going to be. We need to accept that. And hope that the mask also prevents them from communicating it to someone else, not just keeping them from getting it. So I would say that we should look at this again after spring break. We should keep everything in place as is for now. I would agree that they don't have to wear masks outside, but inside the schools, inside the classrooms, everyone still wears the mask. That's just would remain part of the education process. And then we can look at it again when they come at our first meeting after spring break. The other thing that I wrote here that I do want to say is that everyone has the habit. You create habits. And when I go outside, I don't have a mask. I'm like, oh my God, I forgot my mask. And I'm looking in the pockets and I'm looking in the car and I borrowed one from Greg. We went to that Lions dinner and I was panicked because I didn't have a mask. I don't want that habit to go away. And then we have to put it together again. Then all of a sudden we're back at, I've got to find a mask. I would like to put it on pause and see how it plays out for the rest of the communities and keep our students and our staff as is for now, within the four walls of the schools and in the four walls of the classrooms. That would be my take on this. I'm conservative and risk averse. Yeah.
So the motion that I originally wanted to make was to keep the mask mandate until the CDC COVID data tracker reflected that we were in the low category.
I like, to be honest, I like what Linda had to say. It's like, let's revisit this. It's not a no, but it's a, let's see how it goes. And I think that's what real science is really all about, is just to see how it goes. I think, let's see how things are unfolding and we can revisit this.
So we have a meeting on April 21st, I think.
Okay.
So keep the mask mandate until with the expectation that the board will review the mask mandate at its April 21st meeting.
Yes.
Okay. I make that motion.
Do you need a mo?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's fine. My hand is up, Peter. It's been up.
Oh, I thought you already spoke. Go ahead, please.
No, I took it down and I put it back up. I wanted to thank my colleagues, and I think there were some very cogent comments. I was going to say Greg really, made some really good points. I think Linda did also. Not that Lydia didn't, also, but I think, the views of the world, I think, that's a good approach to doing it. Now, whenever it does come back, I think there's some flaws that have been pointed out, and I would hope that when we revisit it, the administration will try to address a rollout plan and some of the other issues that might come up, with a little more detail.
What particular would you like?
I asked a question about how are you going to overcome issues like retaliation and mass bullying, and can we do something on campuses to encourage programs of tolerance? Those were the types of issues that I don't, saying that we won't tolerate it or we won't allow it doesn't necessarily mean it won't happen.
Sure.
I think leadership too. I think the school leaderships, the student leadership.
There you go. Yeah.
Really bring up discussions and about it and bring it out there at the lunchtime and, try to promote that, because they've done such a great job on equity. And this is just one more aspect of that.
One of the conversations, like what I was saying, was that it's the dialogue. Like, we don't understand each other unless we talk to each other.
We can't
Sorry,
hear you.
Leah, your microphone's just almost dead.
Great. Can you hear me? Is that better?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
That's much better.
Great. Well, what I was saying was that the part that makes everybody human again is this conversation, right? And that's how we get to know each other and what is important to each other. So yeah, like leadership is a great, it's a great avenue to do that. Maybe even our student board members want to lead some of those discussions, and we can even do it maybe like at a, a meeting, or I don't know, whatever, but we have to have a conversation.
Okay. Linda, is your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to make one comment, something I forgot to say, that fear isn't healthy and fear disrupts education. And I think no student or teacher or staff member should come to school afraid that they might be exposed to something, or afraid they might get bullied, or afraid. And so putting this on pause and moving forward, no one has to deal with that. Everyone's going to be, they wear the mask in school. That's how it is. And we won't have to deal with fear. And I think no one should have to deal with that when they come to school. So that was just my comment I forgot to make. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, so we have a motion from me and a second, I believe it was
Yeah.
trustee Zuniga. Okay. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay. Trustee Zuniga,
Yes.
trustee Land,
Yes.
trustee Dwyer,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes to support it also. So that motion passes 5-0.
And this will be back on our agenda on April 24th.
April 21st.
First, sorry. Okay, good.
Okay. I believe the interim report. Second interim report is our next item.
Mr. Hawkins.
All righty. Well, thank you. I'm always trying to drum up interest for the financial report. And so as every show that had Friends or Cheers as a lead-in, I'm glad that we have some folks that might stick around to hear about the district's finances. All right. We're at second interim. And so second interim in terms of our budget reporting is really that tipping point where after today, really more of our time is to be spent going on to next year. It's the last full report that really only focuses on the current year as we move forward towards budget development for 2022, 2023. Next slide. So this is our new accountant in the department. He's really pushing for a balanced budget or some of that new Laura Scudder's peanut butter, whichever. He'll take both. All right, next slide. You hired a nerdy accountant, so you'll get some nerdy accountant jokes. If you know who this is, you know that on the left is Lieutenant Commander Data before the pandemic, and we're not at the end of the pandemic, but I think it is an important thing that we do have continued impacts of COVID on our community, on our students, on our staff, and on the budget as well. But also I like nerd jokes. So we move on. Next slide. Through this presentation, I'm going to go over main takeaways. We'll take a brief look at the budget calendar, go over changes from budget adoption to first interim and changes since first interim. We'll take a quick look at the high-level assumptions that we're using in our current year and our multi-year projections. We'll go over the details of the second interim financial report and the multi-year projections. I will give you my recommendation for the certification of the second interim report. We'll just touch on one-time COVID relief funding as there's significant funds that are being spent and will continue to be spent over the next 2 years. And then really focus and end on the things that the future considerations that we're thinking about. Next slide. All right, so if you don't take anything else away from the presentation, these are the items to really take away. So the first is the long-term impact of one-time COVID-19 funding. So we've added positions around the expanded learning opportunities grants and other one-time funding, which will have to be faded out over the next couple of years. The current year budget includes a little under $2.5 million of one-time RDA funding related to a change in process, a legal case at the county, which artificially improves the district's position in 2021, 2022. We continue to see impacts of COVID-19 as recently as the Omicron variant and all the the expenditures that were made in January, February, and continue around that. Our operational revenue continues to return slowly. This is mainly in the area of transportation and facility use. We continue to see the negative pressure of state mandated pension rates. Next year, those rates are scheduled to go up over 2%, and on both sides. Overall, we are in a strong financial position to face the challenges that are ahead. And then two more, all those were takeaways from first interim. Two new ones that I think are important to look at. The board received an enrollment report recently, which showed the projections of a decline in enrollment. It's important that we continue to monitor that closely as to see if this was a COVID blip, or if we truly are having the declines that we're looking at. And the last is the governor's proposed budget in January. While we had some hopes of some significant new potential revenue for San Mateo Union High School districts, we did not see that in the governor's proposal. Next slide. Here's our budget calendar. Where we are is in the second interim, which includes financial activity through January 31st, and looks at the current and 2 next fiscal years. Next slide. From where we were at budget adoption to first interim, we updated property taxes. They're at about the same overall level, but secured taxes were lower, unsecured taxes were higher. So that's a less favorable mix, but overall the levels were the same. They did not change as of second interim. I noted we had a one-time redevelopment agency revenue of $2.4 million, which we will not see in future years. We updated the staffing, negotiations, and statutory rates to their final approved levels. And then we updated our special education and other grants from the adopted state budget to first interim. Next slide. Since from first interim to second interim, overall, we were the overall levels are very consistent with first interim. So we're not seeing any significant changes from first interim to second interim. We did have a few items. There was a correction related to some of the limitations of the state software. So you saw a restricted revenue increase related to that. That's not a true increase. That's just related to state reporting. The retirement rates have been updated in the out year. The PERS rates have been adjusted slightly downwards in the out years, although still significantly increasing. And we also updated our utility projections as well as our investments in technology. Next slide. Overall, just to hit on a couple of the key assumptions that we're working with. Our assessed valuation is at 3.83% this year, which was lower than in many of the prior years. Our out-year projections continue to be 3.5%, which continues on from first interim. We noted we're starting to see and projecting an enrollment decline in the district after a period of enrollment increases over the last 5 to 10 years. Very important to note that we do not have any salary increases projected in the multi-year projections. And the CalPERS rates, as you can see, from 2021-22 to 22-23, those rates increase over 2%. Both PERS and STIRS are projected for next year. So that really comes off the top. It's the same impact as a 2+% a salary increase to all units. Our contribution to the restricted programs is primarily related to special education and really the unfulfilled promises of the state and federal government to pay for those important required services. Next slide. This is a really detailed slide. The detail is in the overall report, but this just has the history from our unaudited actuals to second interim right here. The deficit that's noted is really spending down of restricted resources that were received in the last year related to COVID-19 funding. Unrestricted, we have a balanced budget. In fact, a tiny excess of about $70,000 on the unrestricted side. Next slide. As we look to the multi-year financials, I noted we have about a $73,000 excess in the current year on unrestricted. I really focus on the unrestricted side of the budget because it's the telltale factor of our financial health. Because of those PERS and STIRS rate increases and a couple other factors, we see a small deficit of about 1% projected in 2022-23, but that flips to about a 0.5% excess in 23-24. It's important to note that we're using the 3.5% projection for assessed value growth in the out years, but there are no salary increases included in this current projection. Next slide. In terms of certification, staff is recommending a positive certification. As President Hanley noted earlier in the meeting, the county concurred and accepted our positive certification for first interim, but the positive certification notes that the district will be able to meet its financial obligations for the current and subsequent 2 fiscal years. Next slide. We've noted this before, and this has been updated slightly with some updated amounts from first interim, but we're looking at over $14 million of COVID-related funding, and this doesn't even include the initial funding that was received as part of the 2020-2021 budget. This just includes AB 86, which was in the spring of 2021, as well as ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, which related to the second and third stimulus bills by the federal government. We have a plan currently to spend that money over the current and next 2 fiscal years, where we will step down those investments as the money runs out. Next slide. Overall, this is I call it the what keeps Yancey up at night slide. So what are we looking at? Continuing to monitor our property tax growth pretty much daily. I'm looking at the county's assessed value tracker, looking at those phase outs of one-time funding. All of those are really good services, and they're needed to support our students through some of the learning loss and other impacts of COVID-19, but those will have to phase out as the funding goes away. Continuing to look at our enrollment, if it continues to decline, really looking at all of our sites and making sure that we can, in the out years, that we can still run successful programs even as enrollment declines. Those state mandated increases to pension rates. One thing in the May revise of the governor's budget we'll be looking for is if there's any support to school districts in order to support them around state mandates to pension increases. Obviously, we're starting negotiations with our labor partners, so that'll be an important item as we move forward in our projections. And special education and out year COVID pandemic impact. COVID's been a roller coaster, and so we continue to see changes in that. Next slide. I'm up here, but the folks who really do the work are listed here on the slide. I'm incredibly lucky to work with such amazing folks. That includes Valerie Miller, Vanessa Castano, and Sylvia Goodwin, who has stepped up as our department has been without an executive coordinator and just done an amazing job. So I'm up here giving you all this information, but these 3 women and their team have done all the real work here, and I just can't thank them enough. So with that, we can take the presentation down, and I'm happy to open it up to questions.
Trustee Griffin. You're on mute.
Sorry. I got a couple of questions. Inflation and fuel cost. How are we covering that in the budget? Because it looks like it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
So inflationary factors, yes, we will be including those in the adopted budget. We've already included, school services has a recommendation around planning factors for inflation. So we'll be looking at that in terms of services. So you will see some increases during the board study session around the 2022-23 budget around that. In terms of gas prices, that is an impact to our transportation fleet. We're somewhat lucky in the sense of that geographically, for as many students as we have, we're relatively a small geographic size for as many students as we have. So the miles that we put on our buses aren't excessive, and therefore that cost isn't, but we definitely, we will see increases needed in fuel costs over the next couple of years, obviously to see, a 20+% increase in fuel costs. The other things that we look at when those fuel costs are number two, utility costs, because a lot of times oil and other things are indicative of utility costs. So we'll be looking at those very importantly, and then not in the general fund, which we spend most of this time on, but fuel prices are a huge driver of construction costs, as a lot of our products are made, oil-related products, as well as all the shipping that is needed for heavy products that we ship from all over the state and country to get. So we're gonna probably be seeing impacts on these projects for this summer, as well as the out years. So those are the things that we're going to be tracking, but I definitely expect, some of those costs, Trustee Griffin, these costs weren't necessarily included in the second interim, is only through January 31st is the information that we use in the report. But you definitely will see it in the study session and in the proposed budget as we move forward.
One other just follow up on that. It seemed like several years ago we were looking at that same thing. And are there any hedging strategies or anything worthwhile or anything that would contain our cost looking forward? I mean, it's kind of hard to say, but I'm just asking,
No, there's actually a huge, and this is going to be a spoiler to the board's weekly, but the district was just approved through the Bay Area Air Quality Management District for a significant grant of potentially up to $3.2 million for electric bus over the next several years. So as we, it's not necessarily a pure hedge on costs, but obviously electric bus would lessen our dependence on gasoline and diesel and natural gas, which is likely what the buses that would be replaced under that. So that is one strategy. Also looking at energy efficiency in our projects and looking at energy demand at our sites and, being more careful about that.
Just out of curiosity, how many buses does 3.2 million get us?
Not as much as you would like, Peter. Electric buses at this time cost approximately $400,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, actually. I was thinking they're probably pretty expensive.
They are very expensive, but at least in this round, we're looking at that. The governor also put $1.5 billion in his proposed budget for the electrification of California school bus fleets. We'll see if that's included in the final budget that comes in June. but it was included in his January proposal. So it's obviously it's a high priority item for the governor.
Trustee Dwyer.
I just have a quick one. Thank you for the report. I thought it was great. Thank you, Vanessa, Valerie, Sylvia, everyone who helped, because I know it's a lot of work. So kudos to all of you. I see you smiling. My question is just real quick. Could you just update us on the reserve, our current reserve number, and what you anticipate in the next couple of years?
Yeah, so our current reserve, we have our basic aid reserve of 12%, and we're looking at COVID and other factor out year risk of about an additional 4% when we're looking at that right now. I think it's important as we don't know what the other impacts of COVID continue to be, that we're in a good position for that, as well as we look at those PERS and STIRS risks. STIRS, that's not something that the board is choosing to do. Those are mandated at the state level. We have no choice but to pay those. So until they kind of hit their peak, I think it's a really good idea for the district to be well financially positioned in that. I also think, as Dr. Skelly noted earlier, on a lot of the COVID things that we go above and beyond and do more and sometimes the most of any other district. And we've been able to do that because of our strong financial position. And so I think that's a key factor.
Thank you.
Trustee Land.
Thank you. Actually, yeah, I was just going to repeat what Linda said about great report, and also kudos to Valerie and Vanessa and Sylvia now. That was awesome. I know how hard they work and I appreciate it entirely. I have a couple questions. So going on what Linda talked about with the 12% reserve with plus 4%-ish, is that, so the ending balances of 34 million and so I'm looking at the multi-year projections. So with the ending balance of 34 million, is that a 12% reserve, 12% plus 4% reserve?
Yeah, it's a little over 16%.
16%. Okay. So then the 30 million and the 30 million plus change or whatever, how is that in the reserves? How does it go down in the multi-year?
It's about 15%.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Sorry, my math sucks.
No.
So I needed somebody else to do it for me. I have a couple other questions. One is looking at the multi-year projections, the federal goes from 7.7 to 2.9. Why the reduction in federal funds that much?
So that relates to the one-time COVID funding. So even though it was allocated, federal funding mostly works in a way where it is recorded as revenue when it actually is spent. And so we projected to spend it this year. So the revenue will be recorded in this year. Most of that revenue actually was collected at the end of last year or early this year. So that's the primary decrease.
Okay. And then last question I have is, and I got your data. I'm total Star Trek, so I got that completely. So thank you.
I love it.
The last question I have is CASBO talking about anything about the STIRS and PERS increase? Is there any thought that legislatures will change that in any of the budgets that may be coming up, or possibilities? Is that talked about at all?
Yeah, we're hearing a pretty big push from CSBA and from CASBO around that. I will also say that we were seeing a pretty big push before the governor's January proposed budget, and we didn't see it in that. But of any of it would be the one item that I think would support and help our district the most, and districts across the state fairly evenly. We'll see how that goes. I am hopeful, but I don't expect it. But yeah. I am hopeful. I think there will be a lot of political pressure, and so we'll see what happens.
I agree, and that's what I'm hoping for. So thank you. Okay, excellent.
I believe we need a vote on this.
Did you still have a question, or?
I make a motion to adopt the second interim report.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion from trustee Land, second from trustee Griffin. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, trustee Zuniga,
Yes.
trustee Land,
Yes.
trustee Dwyer, trustee Dwyer, I'm not hearing anything.
Yes. I didn't hear you.
And I vote yes. So the interim report is approved 5-0. Okay, we have approval of the 22-23 budget development calendar.
This is my item as well. Speaking of hard work by our business office and Valerie and Vanessa and team, the attached budget calendar is very similar to the calendar that we've had in the past, but I think it's a key document as we move forward for a June budget adoption to meet our statutory requirement of a June 30th budget adoption. So I'm here to answer any questions.
Can I make a motion to approve the budget development calendar?
So
Okay,
can I just, part of the study session was to look at this, and we had some discussion, Mr. Hanley, and I was going to get back to you and have some more about it. But the reason that we're recommending the April 28th as a study session is that our revenue side is fairly immune from the state actions, but the expenditure side is something that we need to have more discussion on, if you will. And so the 28th gives the board or gives staff the chance to hear from the board and then have a longer runway to implement those suggestions. So based on what we hear from the April 28th to the June meetings when we finally discuss and then approve the budget. So that's why we still think that the 28th is better. So if that's okay with folks, we'd like to do it that way.
Fine.
Okay.
okay. So we have a motion from trustee Land. Is there a second to approve the calendar?
Second.
Okay, we have a second from trustee Dwyer. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Zuniga,
Yes.
trustee Land,
Yes.
trustee Dwyer,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So the calendar is approved 5-0. That takes us through section M, special reports. Let's move on to construction. N1 is award best value design build contract for district-wide public address system replacement project to Breyer Electric Company.
All right, so this is a design build contract, and we're bringing a best value recommendation to the board on this project. We are thrilled with the bids that we got and with Breyer Electric to do that. I'm happy to open it up to any questions that the board may have.
Okay. Are there any questions on this item?
President Hanley, I would be remiss to say this is within the board approved budget. That would be very important.
It's important.
Well, in that case, I'm going to make a motion to approve it then.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from trustee Land and a second from trustee Griffin, right?
It's fine.
Okay. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Zuniga,
Yes.
trustee Land,
Yes.
trustee Dwyer,
Yes.
and I vote yes also. So back to the next item.
HVAC.
Approval to add district-wide HVAC controls replacements to Measure L bond project list.
All right. Can we promote Mr. Lee on this one? Last December, in the December of 2020, the board approved the Measure L bond list that included projects across all sites and many district-wide projects. Staff is recommending that we add the district-wide HVAC controls project to that project list. HVAC has become obviously significantly more scrutinized over the last couple of years as we've really looked at the ventilation throughout the district. Our controls are different at all sites and difficult to control district-wide. They're coming to the end. Some of them are coming to the end of their useful life, and staff is recommending that we move to an upgrade and a universal system that will allow for better control and improved efficiency of the system. This project will be funded through savings already on some of the projects, so no projects will be impacted by adding this project to the list. Mr. Lee, do you have any other things to add on that?
No, I think you covered it well. This will allow wireless connectivity so your HVAC technicians can log on from their laptop or their smartphone and determine whether the unit's running, whether it's producing heat or cooling, and do remote diagnostics of the system.
So, it seems like a very good project. I just had a question because the brief on the agenda says it's being funded by basically the Transite, by savings from the Transite project. Could you elaborate on how we saved on the Transite project?
Yeah, so the scope of the budget was an initial on the Transite projects from December of 2020. So it was a high level budget. When we got into the detailed planning of those projects, the scope was updated to match the needs of those projects and brought back during schematic design. That schematic design cost for the 3 projects, we saw savings on 2 of those projects and a little bit of an increased cost on another one. But overall, some fairly significant savings that can be used to fully fund this project, and the rest that will go back into the overall contingency of the Measure L project.
Okay. Is there any other questions? I don't see any hands raised. Is there a motion to approve this project being added to Measure L?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Trustee Griffin and a second from Trustee Land. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Zuniga,
Yes.
Trustee Land,
Yes.
Trustee Dwyer. I think that was a yes, but you're muted.
Oops, yes.
And I vote yes, so that item is approved 5-0. Okay. Human Resources, approval of personnel actions.
Yes, we have personnel actions and addendum with 2 longevity recognitions. At the adult school, Patricia Brown, our ESL program coordinator, has submitted her retirement effective July 8th, after 25 years and 8 months in the district. And then Lucy White, administrative assistant at Hillsdale High School, submitted her retirement effective at the end of the day, on April 29th. And she's been with the district for 28 years and 9 months.
I make a motion I make a motion to approve the personnel actions.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion from trustee Land, second from trustee Dwyer. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Zuniga,
Yes.
trustee Land,
Yes.
trustee Dwyer,
yes.
and I vote yes. So personnel actions are approved. 02, approve the resolution of non-reemployment of probationary certificate employee 21-22-25.
I move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from trustee Dwyer, a second from trustee Land. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Zuniga,
Yes.
trustee Land,
Yes.
trustee Dwyer,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So that resolution is approved. 03, approve the resolution of release and reassignment of certificate administrators 21-22-24.
I move approval.
Second.
Okay, motion from trustee Dwyer, second from trustee Land. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Zuniga,
Yes.
trustee Land,
Yes.
trustee Dwyer,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So that is approved 5-0. We're down to the review and discuss the specific board policies and administrative regulations, December 2021, part 2 updates. Did anyone have any comments,
No.
edits, critiques?
Nope.
Can these go to consent for next meeting for final approval?
Yes.
I just
Yeah,
want
they looked all statutory to me when I went through them.
I agree. And I was just going to complain about AR 6112 about the school day and starting the late start and having some issues with that, but I'm still going to approve it.
Yeah, the only thought was we could probably take, it looked like some of the language on TK to 6 was still left in there. I think we could scrub some of that language could be out of there since we're not planning to run those grades.
Okay, we'll do that.
But that was my only
Okay.
comment. I believe, are there any new board items to be added? I think we've got enough to do for the next couple of months.
I did have a question. Were we going to get another update with Leadership Associates on our search?
I've forgotten what the schedule is. There is another one coming up. Shar, do you remember?
I believe in a few weeks, they'll be proposing another special meeting to meet with all of you.
Yeah,
I believe so. I can't remember it right off the
yeah.
top.
If someone just can email me so I can put it in my calendar, that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good idea.
I can do that.
okay. Yeah, it might be part of the March 24th meeting. I can't remember exactly. Okay. I think we are adjourned. We've completed this agenda. Thank you all for your work tonight. Thank everybody else.
Happy Thursday. Good night.
Happy
Night.
Thursday.